What's going on, Comms 473? My name is Jamie Vest, and I'm here today to talk to Mr. Hyland. He's Liberty Christian Academy's main Bible teacher, and he's the author of the 5 Laws of Liberty. The United States has always been one of the most religious nations in history. How do you feel we're going to be in about 20 years?
I think in 20 years, that's 4 presidencies. I think that if you look at the history of our country, maybe since the 62 and 63 Supreme Court ruling to eject prayer and Bible reading out of schools, we've regressed so rapidly over the last 5 decades, and I think that we are living in a time where there's such a publicly there are people that desire to completely remove any mention of God out of the public square, and even though we are still free, we can speak freely about religious matters, Christian matters. There seems to be an ever increase in the restrictions of what we can actually say and do.
Now, Roosevelt's memorial only has the mention of the word faith, with him being very prominent about his beliefs throughout his candidacy. Does that memorial do him as much justice as it should?
No way. I don't think so. I think that, again, along with the restrictions that are being placed upon the citizens of the United States, it's no surprise that you see censorship taking place at every level of government, especially whenever they erect a new memorial. I think that they are even attempting to erase mentions of God off of memorials that have been in place for decades, some even centuries.
Do you think the censorship is getting a little bit too high?
I do. I think that it's a misrepresentation of who we are as a people. I think there's a great verse in Scripture that says, if the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? I think that it's a misrepresentation of our history.
Now, with the misrepresentation with Christianity, it seems that Christianity is just kind of being pulled off the map. It seems that, when we misrepresent something, even as something as homosexuality, it just seems like it's getting higher.
Mm-hmm.
How is your look on that? Because it seems if they take that out of DC, then that's just going to get higher and higher, and we're just not even going to go back on any of the beliefs that this country was set on.
I think whenever you think in terms of ethics or worldview, there's always a source, a core by which you determine what is considered right and what is considered wrong. And as you look at traditional America, the majority of people historically have had a Christian foundation. And as you mentioned, behavior such as homosexuality or any sexual immorality, in order to excuse that kind of behavior, you've got to have a paradigm shift. And that shift is going to embrace a different core focus for how they determine what is right and what is wrong. I like to say to people concerning sexual immorality, it doesn't have to just be limited to homosexuality. Any type of sexual behavior outside of the bounds of matrimony has a tendency to erode the foundation of the family. And I like to say that casual sex is responsible for the mutation of marriage, the exploitation of women and children, and the termination of the preborn.
All right, there's also a quote at the D-Day Memorial that stops 16 words short, and the words that mention God, why, especially in a place like D.C., that was built on the foundation of God merely starting to be taken away piece by piece.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think that that is going to, especially with the younger generation,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that that's morally correct?
I don't think it's morally correct, because anyone that involves themselves in history, the study of history, if you're going to say, I'm concerned about the historicity of any event or person, you want it to be recorded truthfully and accurately. There seems to be a deliberate agenda to remove any mention of God from historical records. So I do not think that that is correct. I think that it is wrong. It's a misplaced approach to recording history, accurately displaying history.
And with the whole accurately displaying history, it just seems kind of like Obama is a big part in it. And it seems like he keeps getting praised for different things.
Mm-hmm.
Just how Jason Collins just came out as a homosexual. He got praised for that on a national stand.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that that's going to influence the younger generation?
I think any type of leadership, any man or woman that has a highly visible position is definitely going to have some kind of trickle-down effect. I think what's taking place in America, it began long before President Obama became our leader. I think that he has contributed to that steady flow away from our foundational beliefs. But yeah, I think anytime that you have a person in a position of leadership, they're going to have some kind of influence upon the young. And even as you mentioned memorials, what's the purpose of a memorial? Why do we even set up a memorial? Well, we do that hopefully to inspire future generations based upon what got us to that event. I mean, that's why we have the Lincoln Memorial. You have his second inaugural address. If you've ever gone to Lincoln Memorial, it's almost spiritual at times. I know I personally have found myself in the Lincoln Memorial. I had a colleague of mine one time ask me to recite the memorial, what was stated in the second inaugural address, out loud. And when I did that, there were at least 50 high school students from public schools, along with their teachers, that became completely quiet. It was one of the most powerful moments of my life. But the words, he cites scripture, he mentions God, and no one was offended that day. They delighted in being a part of history, and history, it allows you, memorials allow you to be taken back to a point in time where there were men who made courageous decisions. Maybe their lives were shaped by great events, but still that would claim that they were given wisdom to allow the country to make it through some of the darkest periods in our history because of the guidance they received from God and Scripture.
Now, since God and Scripture is a huge foundation of what this country is based upon, things like the coins and folding the flags at memorials and official flag certificates are now being censored, Christian censored, in the sense. It seems that America is starting to fall apart at the seams. Do you agree?
Again, I think that when I think in terms of freedom for myself personally, I've written a book, The 5 Laws of Liberty, and the thesis for my book is that freedom is the responsible pursuit and preservation of life, and no other system of belief accomplishes that better than Christianity. So if freedom is a responsible pursuit and preservation of life, and if the fabric by which we hold the seams together happens to be the truth of Christianity, then there is no doubt in my mind that we're going to see a radically different America in the future. And I quite frankly believe, based on the authority of history and the authority of Scripture, there's no way that we can survive as a nation as we continue to make those choices.
All right. There is a $620 million underground shrine that's being built, and it just seems like they've taken everything that has anything to do with God out of it. A congressman is calling it the $600 million godless pit. Not only did they deliberately omit God from everything, but they've gotten tons of actual facts wrong, and they are expected to have about 15,000 plus visitors a day. With the way it seems that America is going, do you think that people will still realize what is happening? Because it seems like they're kind of trying to change history in the most historical place in America.
When you ask, do I think that people will realize what is happening, I think there will always be an informed element of people. I think there will always be a small remnant of people who are going to put the time in to actually read history and to see for themselves that just about every one of our founding fathers, I think 50 out of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence belong to Christian denominations. I mean, you can read, and it would not take a whole lot of digging to find our first 3 presidents, Washington, Adams, Jefferson, all believed in a future state of rewards and punishments. They all referred to God. Even Jefferson, who is supposed to be the least religious, he has quotes about Jesus. He says at one point, the precepts of philosophy and of the Hebrew code laid hold of actions only, but he, Jesus, pressed his scrutinies into the heart of man, set up his tribunal in the region of his thoughts, and purified the waters at the fountainhead. You cannot deny that. I think there will always be a remnant of people that will cry out for the accurate report of history. But I think by and large, if you examine the education system in our country and what we really focus upon, how we can have college graduates that are hard-pressed to even state some of the major facts of American history, it's disheartening. I think that there will be a large portion of the people that it will be oblivious to them.
All right, and one last question. From your perspective, what can America do as a nation to stop this madness?
I think those of us who genuinely care about our country, care about the reputation of America, understand the foundation. I think with our dying breath, we have to make sure that we are studious about making sure that we're well read on history. And you'd be surprised. There are a number of people that when you present the facts of American history and you do so in a winsome manner, that there are a number of people that maybe you can win them as converts, and they too may then adopt a lifestyle of saying, I have a responsibility to make sure what is said in our legal documents, what is stated in the Constitution, who were the men that actually forged this nation. So I would like to think, and I operate under the premise that my voice as a Christian and as an American can be a voice in the darkness, hopefully shedding light in the minds of those that have been convinced otherwise.
All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.